Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to do a flare that's going to be cut on the bias. So we're going to actually be adding a little more volume into the middle of this skirt pattern. So I've traced out my sloper. As you can see, I've traced all around it. You notice I've already got X's out of my dart here. I've drawn my high hip line. So I've drawn my legs of my dart, but I've crossed it out because in order to get enough volume around the hem of our skirt, we have to actually take this one dart and have it to be two darts. Now, I'm not too worried about the actual size or length of them for this purpose because they're going to get folded out, but I do need to have two lines that carry down to the bottom so that I'm adding enough volume evenly around the whole skirt. We're going to be tracing the back of the skirt as well and doing it the exact same as what I've done for the front. So I've got my high hip. I've marked the center front here for this one. I've crossed this out. Now, what you need to know before you get to this point is you need to know what the measurement with this dart closed of your front is. Now, I happen to know that it's 8 inches. So now I need to distribute that 8 inches across this front. So I want to have roughly half, because remember, this is half of the front here. So I'm going to measure over. I've sat and figured out a bit of calculations here. So I'm going to measure over from my center front 1.5 inches, or 2 inches actually. I'm going to measure in here 2 inches. So I've got my line marked at 2 inches. I'm going to take this 1 inch dart, and I still want to have it in here, but I want to have 2 darts. So I want to have a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to mark over a 1/2 inch. So this is going to end up being a dart. I'm now going to take and I'm going to mark over 3 inches. So the space between here, just ignore this dart because we're not going to use it, is 3 inches. I'm now going to mark over another 1/2 inch. This is going to be my second dart. So now what I have from the leg of the second dart over to the side seam is 3 inches. So these are now going to be my new darts. I want the flare of my front to start at the high hip. So this is why I've drawn this high hip line here. So I need to find the center of my darts. So that's going to be at the 1/4 inch mark. So I've got my center. So I'm going to square that line up with my high hip. I'm going to draw a line straight down. Now I'm going to draw the legs of my dart to come down to the bottom on this one. And the same over here. I'm going to take this at a 1/4 inch. And I'm now going to draw this line. I'm going to square this up on the high hip. I'm going to draw this line straight down. So now I'm going to draw the legs of my dart in both sides. Like I say, these don't matter too much because they are going to get folded out. So as you can see, we've got a bigger space from the side to the first dart in the middle. The center front is a little bit smaller. Now remember, there's another half to this. So this will, if this is cut on a fold or it's cut with another side to it, you're going to have the same distance. You're going to actually have a little bit wider area where the flare is in the front, which isn't a bad thing. Okay, so now I'm going to take and I want to draw. This ruler isn't quite long enough, so I am going to cheat here and line this up at the bottom. Make sure that these line up here on my, coming right off of the bottom of that dart. And I'm going to draw this line, make sure everything stays straight. So there's my first line that I'm going to be cutting on. Now I'm going to come across here. Same thing, just going to line this up so I've got a little bit longer ruler. And I'm going to come across. Make sure that you're straight. A little harder to do with 2 pieces. Okay, so these are now my new cutting lines. Now I'm not going to add an extension at the side here because I'm going to be opening these up. So I don't feel I need to add an extension at the side. Now I'm going to take and I'm going to cut up these lines. So right up to the base of this dart, so right up to that high hip line. Make sure the scissors go right to there. I'm going to cut this other line, same thing, right straight up to that high hip. Make sure that you... Okay, now I'm going to cut one leg of my dart down, trying to leave a little bit of a hinge. And I still have a little bit too much. And I'm going to cut the other leg of the dart down, leaving a hinge. Okay, so now I want to add the flare to my skirt. Okay, so what I need to do is I need to decide how much I want. You want to add between 2 to 4 inches in each of these. Now I'm going to see what happens here, that my camera doesn't move out of the way too much. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open this dart up, this first one. I'm going to put my strip inside, and I'm going to add 2 inches in here, just for the sake of not losing all of my visual with my camera. Get this in, I've got a little bit different paper. So now I'm going to take, and you can see I've got my dart closed right off. Same thing is going to happen on this piece here. This dart is going to end up being closed right out. So there won't be a dart at the waistline of this skirt. Okay, so I think you can see how that is going. Now, you may want to add more flare than what your dart leg is going to close at. So this one I can actually close it right on this dart, and I'm going to take and I'm going to tape this down, get this one done. So I've taped that down. Now I'm going to measure off here. So I've opened this up 3 inches, not 2. So I have to make sure that I open up the next one at 3 inches. So I'm going to put a piece of tape down here, because you want to make sure that whatever you do in one extension, you add the same amount in the other. So my hinge is broken up here, so I'm just going to make sure that when I close this off, there we go. So I've got this dart closed out. Let's take a measure down here. So I'm not quite 3 inches, so I'm actually going to have to take, and I don't know if you can see, but I actually have to fold this out a little bit more than what my dart has in it. So I'm going to be losing a little bit off of the waist here, which I'm going to show you how to compensate for in a minute. Okay, so it won't be too much, but it will be a little bit here. So first thing I want to do is I'm just going to put a little piece of tape down here, because I want to see how much I've gone over. So I've now got my next extension put in here, and so I know that this one is 3 inches. I want to double check. This one is now 3 inches. So I'm going to tape this down. Remember to, once you've got all your stuff done, to tape everything really well if you're not retracing over. So you can see these are now my extension pieces. So this is the addition that I've put in my skirt. So I'm going to do the exact same thing on the back. So we're going to actually be adding 12 inches of flare to the bottom of the skirt. Now you could do this, you could add 4. You could add this up to 4 inches, so that would be 16 inches. Anything more than that, and you probably want to draft yourself out a circle skirt, or just a circle with a little bit cut out of the side. But for now, this is how we're going to do our bias cut skirt with the flare. So remember up here, I've gone over. So I'm actually over by, I would say, I'm over by 1/8 of an inch. So when I measure this waist, which I can almost do here with my ruler, I'm coming out at 7.5 inches instead of 7 3/4 inches. So what I can do is I can actually just add that 3/4 of an inch into the side here. So then I'm just going to take my ruler and I'm just going to bring it down. Now, you notice here that we've added a little bit up here. So through the hips, I've actually got a little more room. Now, because this is going to be cut on the bias, there's going to be a little bit of stretch to it. So this seam here should actually be straight. So rather than me taking and adding anything to it, I can actually take and straighten it out. So I'm going to actually do that in pink here so you can see. So I'm actually straightening this seam out. Make sure it straightens out. It can have a bit of a curve up here, but you may want to take, you want to have it fairly straight right down, okay? So take a note of this extra piece here. As long as what you're taking out of here, you've got added into this area here, okay? Which I obviously have that much. So now, same thing as I've done before, I need to measure down. So I'm going to need that extra little ruler here. So I know, actually I'm going to take my tape measure because that's going to work a little bit better. So I'm going to do my hem. So I'm going to run up one side of my extension to the high hip, and I'm at 18 3/8. So I'm going to keep it there and draw across 18 3/8 all the way across. I'm going to do the same to this one. Make sure that they're both equal, which they are. So 18 3/8 all the way. Okay, now the last thing we want to do before I actually draw that line is you're going to notice now that this side seam is going to be on even more of a bias, and especially because we are cutting this skirt on the bias. So what we did with an A-line flare was we brought the side seam up 1/4 inch. Because this is more flared, we're actually going to bring this up 1/2 inch. So I'm going to take and draw this up 1/2 inch here. So now I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to curve this into the center of my skirt at the front. So I'm going to have to, so this is where you'll have to fiddle around a little bit with your curve ruler. Go back and forth till you get a curve that looks good. Okay. So there, this is not the right one, but there's my curved line there for my side seam. Okay, now I want to put my grain line on. So I want to be able to put on a bias grain. So the easiest way to do that is to take, here's my center front, which I know if I was cutting it, it would be on the grain. So I'm actually going to draw out a 1-inch box right on my center front. Now I'm just going to go from corner to corner. Make sure that you intersect both corners and draw my line. So here is my new grain line. So this is going to run parallel to the selvage edge of my fabric. Another option that you can do is you can actually lay this out and you can trace this on a fold and then open it up so that you can cut one piece of a center of a front. Otherwise, you're going to have to add a seam allowance all along the front as well as at the sides. You're going to have a seam allowance. Okay, so that is a flared skirt cut on the bias.